Hi, I'm Dani Brown, or the Queen of Filth, or Queenie, which Drew from Godless started calling me, and it's taken off, and it's definitely an improvement on the Queen of Filth, which I don't actually like being called. So I am going to be reading one of my horror flash stories, which was published in Crystal Lake's Shallow Waters book. So this is from Shallow Waters, Volume 1, a flash fiction anthology, a series of supernatural stories, and it is available on Amazon. Link is down below. And let me just find this story. And it is called Rats Scratched in the Linen Cupboard. So, rats scratched in the linen cupboard, waiting for a nurse to come in the morning and let them out. The corridor glowed with a strange buzz of fluorescent lights on their last hour. Children slept in beds, waiting for death to take them in the night, waiting to be allowed home with medicine and instructions to follow to stay alive. Marcy's boots dropped dirt on the dusty tiles, and her zippers sang with the song of death. A bucket of slime spread tendrils of rotten decay up the walls. No nurses lurked in the station, no new admissions in the middle of the night. Eggs suspended in slime caught the light of the dying fluorescence. Each one fertilized with a baby with bright blue eyes and tentacles in place of limbs. Marcy's boots picked them up and carried them a few paces before they squashed in a repeat of where she had only been a few seconds before. Rats scratched in the linen cupboard and climbed Marcy's boots to perch on her shoulder. She opened the door and stepped out onto the dimly lit corridor. The bucket of slime tipped over, the floor decayed. A baby with tentacles instead of limbs, and Dani's bright blue eyes screamed at her. A rat bit her finger and pulled a wax-black thread holding her hand together. The tentacle queen stepped out from the shadows, her form concealed behind latex. The monster projected onto the walls. She held a stopwatch. Time's up. Rats scratched in the linen cupboard. Marcy's legs swelled together. Her shaking hand pulled the door open, leaving behind a layer of skin. A child's long-forgotten doll stared at her with its cotton insides leaking into the puddle of slime. Marcy pulled the door shut, tears down her cheeks flaying the skin. Rats scratched in the linen cupboard. Marcy's tears dragged off chunks of flesh. Her hands rested in a pile of dead flies. She lifted them to feel the wall to the door handle, dragging wax-black threads with her movement. The flies buzzed into life. She opened the door and stepped into the dusty corridor. The fluorescence gave a final high-pitched hum and flicker. Strange pink light cut across the floor, distorted through the dirty windows. Her swollen thighs protested with each step forward. Fluids leaked from vagina to anus and saturated her trousers. Each echo of her footsteps brought fresh pain. She couldn't go forward. Rats scratched in the linen cupboard. Dead flies waited on the floor. Dani's face shimmered from a photograph hanging on from the shelf, hidden behind a filter and photo manipulation. Her thigh split open, spilling more fluid into her trousers. She grabbed the door handle and let the flies and rats out ahead of her. She didn't make it any further. Rats scratched in the linen cupboard. Faint pink light highlighted the slime oozing under the door. Marcy pushed herself to her elbows and rolled over. She reached high, tearing her seams, to open the door and drag herself into the corridor. Children cowered behind the closed doors lining the wall opposite the dirty windows. The forgotten doll lies with its insides dissolved in slime. Cord stepped before her, arms pointed to the sky. Powered by a jet, baby. A cassette tape rewound. Powered by a jet, baby. The rats urged Marcy through. Only a hologram projected onto bottled fog and distorted by pink lights through the dirty windows. Dead flies on the floor buzzed to life as she pulled herself along the dust. Rats scratched in the linen cupboard. Marcy's head banged and a 56-second drum loop caught on repeat. Cord pounded behind the rotten wood. Flies buzzed into life and rats opened the door. Cord was gone. Marcy dragged herself along the corridor. The sound of children's laughter bounced off the crumbling walls and plaster fell from the ceiling. She raised her hands to shield her pounding head. Honey with a taint oozed down the walls and swallowed the puddles of slime, urged forward by the rats, their fur eaten by moths. A toddler with tentacles instead of limbs and Dani's bright blue eyes dropped a contact lens in Marcy's path and screamed until it passed out beneath the pink lights distorted through the dirty windows. Marcy maneuvered her body around the tentacles with protest from her swollen legs. She left a trail of fluids behind, a feast for the flies. Sharp pains gripped her shoulder blades. Rats scratched in the linen cupboard, the door ajar with Marcy's hand blocking the way. A puddle of her own fluid showed her reflection. Deformed wings stood out from her shoulders. She flapped but couldn't fly without feathers. Sir says you need to get up now and move to the end of the corridor. A child slapped her with a tentacle. Dani's picture, stolen and printed from social media, landed in front of her face as the child faded away. Marcy dragged herself along the floor, lubricated by her own fluids. A door opened. A teenage girl lingered in a frame. Hooks instead of hands caught the distorted pink light. Dani's same blue eyes, enhanced with contacts, stared at her. The door for the next room opened on another teenage girl with hooks for hands. Her shaking dislodged dust and plaster. Marcy raised her hand and the ceiling oozed with honey, picking up the taint from the corridor and neon light. The rats pulled her when she couldn't drag herself any further, cutting a fresh path in the dust with her fluids. Forever watched by the two teenage girls with hooks instead of hands. They stepped into the corridor and held each other as Marcy opened the door. Dirt fell onto the dusty tiles from beneath the forest of the dead. Marcy touched it with fingers held together by wax-black threads and began to sing. The only way out was up. She would have to dig. So thank you for listening to that. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like Marcy and Dani, they do have their own story together. It's called 56 Seconds, and it's February 2023, so it's currently only available as an ebook on godless.com. Unless you're lucky enough to get one of the original pressings of it, which it sold like crazy. So there's tons of those books flowing, tons of paperbacks flowing about. However, there will be more paperbacks and, for the first time ever, hardbacks on Amazon at the end of March, beginning of April. So thank you. Bye-bye.